Hello, hello. We are live. It is Sunday, 25th. And we're working on the doctor. Welcome to the stream, everyone. We are just going to do a chat and chill today. A little bit later today, wife and I were out running some errands. Had to get some flowers for the porch, and yeah. But we are just going to hang out. Excuse me, device here. I still have this janky system where the camera is attached to the device. Getting on the fly here. There we go. The camera is attached to the device, and so whenever I have to move, if I have to adjust the device, I end up adjusting the camera as well. We'll figure out a better system. The only issue that I have right now is that my stream setup is not up permanently. I have to take it down every time. So we are just a little bit, everything's just still a little bit temporary. Constantly moving things around. So one of these days, we'll have a permanent setup. I don't think this is quite centered. Let me just move you. There we go. Sorry for anybody who's getting a little seasick. There we are. And is the focus. There we go. So we're finishing the Black Doctor today, and we're just gonna hang out and chat. If you're new to the stream, welcome. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I tie classic Atlantic salmon flies. Today we're finishing up a fly that we started last week. Just a simple, well, relatively simple, straightforward Black Doctor from Price Tannant. If you enjoy what you see and want to see more of my work, you can check out my Instagram. It's at justwondering.brad. And if you want to purchase any of the flies that you see me tie on stream, you can go to my Etsy shop, Studio 1213. All the proceeds from that Etsy shop come back into this hobby. It allows my hobby to be self-sustaining and keeps the wallet happy, as well as allows me to keep buying materials so that I can keep sharing this hobby with other people. All right, so let's get into this. So last week we did the tip, the tag, the body, or the tail, all the body work, hackle. I was looking at this the body, the in progress fly during the week, and noticed that it's a pretty shaggy fly. I would say for a classic, and so I was thinking probably go for a slightly more full wing than I normally do. Normally I like my wings to be pretty compact. So, but we'll go for a little bit more of a chunky looking wing. And part of that will be how we mix the wing together. Actually, I'm not going to mix the wing together at all. I'm just going to build it in big chunks of color and, the neutral colored or the naturally colored fibers. We're just going to leave those in big chunks because that also contributes to a chunkier looking wing, which I think will balance the kind of shagginess, I guess is probably the word for it, of the body. But first things first, the underwing. Now the underwing is specifically mentioned as being mixed, as opposed to built. And I was thinking about this. It did occur to me. So not big enough. Back in the I guess, late 90s, they ran an article in Fly Tire magazine about classic Atlantic salmon flies, and they were talking about how they weren't the author, and I forget who the author was musing on what salmon flies could possibly be imitating. Because a lot of flies are supposed to imitate something. I mean, besides the attractor patterns, you know, in theory, um, we have attractors and their imitators are kind of the two big broad categories, and the author was musing that, well, they're probably just attractor patterns, but if they were imitators, what are they imitating? Um, and there were some interesting kind of like thoughts about like what salmon flies could possibly be imitating. And one of my favorites, or one of my favorite uh, aspects of that article that they did is they took a Atlantic salmon fly and they basically, I don't think it was an X-ray, but I don't think it was. They basically backlit the salmon fly to show you like what a salmon fly would look like if it were wet or if it were in the water. And yeah, that was really interesting because one of the things we kind of don't think about is, well, what, or one of the things that it revealed, which I don't think we think too much about, is, well, how transparent is the wing? How transparent do these materials become? Like, what colors do the fish actually see? That sort of thing. So I thought that was really interesting. It was kind of an interesting exercise. Uh, but one of the really interesting things is that the author pointed out is that the underwing, the combination of the wing, underwing, and if the fly has it, like a bronze mallard roof, kind of looks a lot like like the carapace of a shrimp, which makes sense, right? The salmon obviously feed on shrimp and other similar um, planktonic life forms when they're in the ocean. Um, but the interesting thing about it is that the underwing almost was like basically showed through the wing in a way that it kind of looked um, like the guts or even like the I won't say legs in a way, but like the various like appendages that the shrimp have. Um, so yeah, it was a very interesting look at like what salmon flies look like when they're in the water, when they're wet, how and when they're kind of got that transparency going on. So yeah, it was very cool. But it kind of made me think like, uh, what's the what's kind of the optimal way to tie in an underwing on a salmon fly? Like um, today, modern times, we would put a whole tippet, a whole uh, the whole tippet under as the underwing. Two whole tippets back to back as the underwing. Um, and we don't really think about the difference between an underwing made of a whole tippet versus in strips as it's instructed in a lot of the texts. Uh, so it's kind of an interesting. thing. And like, the other thing that we try to do a lot in modern fly tying is have every component of the wing be somehow visible. When really the underwing, um, from a structural standpoint, is just there to provide support for the wing, um, uh, and then also the visual component. Really, I would guess, my take on it is it doesn't in fact come into play unless the fly is in the water, and the wing becomes that kind of transparent. Um, and it's just kind of an interesting musing, right? About like, well, the way we tie classic Atlantic salmon flies today versus how they tied them or how they're described in the texts, and in the original recipes, and the difference. And obviously, the big difference is we're tying classic Atlantic flies today for display, and they're never going to get wet. They're never going to see, you know, kind of that transparent or translucent wing effect, um, in a display. So um, we tie them differently to accommodate that. But as you can see, I went for a very spiky underwing. This underwing is going to be. I'm planning on having it completely covered by the wing. Um, take a few wraps off this, just to tidy this up a bit. But my plan is to tie this wing kind of in a more faithful style where the underwing is completely covered by the wing. Um, and I'm going to mix it. Now, one thing you can do, again, because this is going to be a display fly, I am going to kind of remarry all of these components just kind of on the wing or on the fly, just so it's not too spiky. Um, excuse me. Uh, I need to grab something. Yeah, I'm a little bit hoarse today, a little bit croaky. My job is to talk to people on the phone, so I do occasionally start to lose my voice a little bit. Okay. Now, as usual, well, I guess not as always usual, but I did this time pre cut all of my wing components. Like I said, I'm just going to leave them in kind of big chunks of color. What I am going to do, however, I'm going to break up the colors. I'm going to break up the colors with a little bit of Cory mustard in between each strip of color. I think that just adds kind of nice bit of definition um, to the wing. So all I'm doing is just marrying together all the bits. I've got, excuse me, I've got a 4 fibers of each color of each component. So there's red, yellow, and blue. Of course, it calls for swan, but I'm using turkey as normal. Um, Florican bustard, which I'm using a substitute as normal. Um, Cory bustard, uh, which is species survival program Cory bustard as normal. Um, and then light mottled turkey. So, and I'm using a lighter Royal Palm mottled turkey, just because I think it contrasts a little bit better with the Florican. And also because it has a bronze roof and the mottled turkey is going to go on the top, it'll contrast well with the bronze mallard as well. The only challenge with this Florican substitute that I have is that the Florican substitute, the way that this was done, was it was dyed. It's basically a cinnamon turkey tail that then was had blackish or dark brown bars dyed into it, and unfortunately, this was a kind of a prototype substitute from John McLean, and I did note that where the darker brown dye had been applied, the barbs, the fibers had actually been burned a little bit. I think that's just an artifact of the particular dye that was used. Um, so yeah, but since it was a prototype, you kind of expect a little bit of fine tuning that needed to go into it. But it looks great. I think it looks good in a wing. Is probably the more important thing. A lot of the substitutes you see, especially for things like golden pheasant, you look at them and you're like, it looks like somebody spray painted um, some version of a black mesh or black screen onto a orange dyed turkey tail. But the thing is once you put it into a wing, most of those subs actually look pretty good because again, you're not seeing the entire feather in the wing. You're just seeing kind of you know a pale strip with some black bars on it, or something like that. So you know you can get away with some pretty goofy subs. And again, one of the keys to marrying wings successfully is to have dry, clean hands. So, of course, before the stream started, I washed my hands. That just because as you handle the feathers, as you handle these fibers, the barbs, um, if you have oils on your hands, you'll mat down the barbs, which are really important for allowing the fibers, the different fibers to interlock and marry together. So, dry, clean hands, very important. And if you're having some difficulty now, I haven't had any difficulty with these because this is almost completely turkey. But if I were to have difficulty, what you can do is if you have a section of a particular slip that isn't marrying properly, you can just pinch it between two bits and just kind of wiggle it like it's up and down. And that kind of helps. That basically takes the two strips and it kind of rubs them together, and that can pull the barbs that have been matted down apart or away from the fiber, and just make them more available to be married. But again, this wing is almost entirely turkey. The only bits that are having real difficulty marrying are the bits where the Florican sub was slightly burned. But that's okay. Now I'm going to trim off the butt ends just to be a little bit shorter, because having different length butt ends like this can make it a little bit harder to tie the wing in. Just because they get caught on each other. Or they, or you catch them with the thread. That's not, and that can pull the wing apart. All right, so I'm just going to shape the wing off the fly a little bit. So I'm going to shape the wing so it has that little bit of a hump here. That just helps give it, because the fibers, the way the fibers are married together here, that you can change the curvature of your wing just by changing how the fibers are married together in the wing. By pushing, and that can actually help keep. You don't have to force everything. Just using the thread. All right. Now, as usual, put the wing up. I'm going to pinch here, right at the tie-in spot. I'm going to soft loop, and then just using the weight of the bodkin and pushing up on the butt ends, using the weight of the bodkin to compress the wing fibers. You want your thread to be unwaxed at this point because you need that thread to be able to slide along the wing. So by pushing up here and maybe a little bit on the wing itself, you can help compress. Then I'm going to pinch right at the tie-in point, give it another soft loop. And then with this second soft loop in place now, you've kind of, all of the pressure now is coming radially or from around the wing. So now you can just gently give it a little bit of a pull to tighten it down. And then I'm just going to gently shape the wing. I'm going to tie that in a little bit long on top, but that's okay. There we go. So that is a pretty well set wing. And so we're just going to take another loop. And every loop, of course, or every wrap goes back down the fly. That just helps both secure it, and it prevents you from changing where you tied it in. Because this first loop, loop closest to the wing, is actually still a soft loop, and until you've really secured the fly, you want to keep that as soft loop, because that's kind of the transition from the super compression under the thread wraps to the kind of the uncompressed so to speak, portion of the wing. So it's all about the feel. And see, having a little bit of difficulty keeping this top strip married to that Florican sub. All right. All you have to do is just pinch the wing and then remarry. Easy enough. So the concept of compressing the wing using your fingers and not the thread is really the important bit, because as I compress with my fingers and allow the thread to tighten around the wing, basically what I'm doing is I'm controlling both the vertical squish of the wing, right, and also preventing that vertical squish from traveling essentially down the wing this way. So if I pinch here, as I tighten the thread, I'm preventing the rest of the wing from compressing as well. Because if you were to just take a stack of fibers this thick, and you were to compress them, just with a piece of thread, you wrap a loop, tighten it down, you'll squish the fibers this way, but then it'll squish evenly from the bottom and the top. And that's what would happen to the wing if you weren't pinching it here. So by pinching it here, you're preventing the wing from squishing from the bottom and only squishing the wing from the top, which is how you control that the compression. Sorry, that's kind of a more technical way to think about it. But that is why pinching it right here, right behind the tie-in point. Now, and some people will say pinch it at the tie-in point. If you pinch it at the tie-in point, it'll still compress equally from the top and the bottom, which is why you get the wings that go when they get tied in. If you pinch it right behind the tie-in point, because the wing is already sitting on the hook, it can only compress from the top, which is what we want. So we're just going to wax our thread to bind down the butt ends as usual. Now at this point, if you wanted to, you could put a drop of head cement right there at the end of the fly. Oops. Sorry. And I know there's a lot of arguments about whether or not you should. To be honest, because I use a lot of tying wax, I don't feel too bad about it. Like the tying wax that they use, this cobbler wax, Kelson's Formula cobbler wax, once it hardens, it's basically like head cement. So and if anybody has like dissected one of the old flies, you'll know that they were basically solid with tying wax. They're not just held together by thread, like this fly actually is. This fly has some wax in it, but they waxed all of their thread, not just the thread used at tie-in points or that sort of thing. So if you wanted to, you would not be too amiss by using a little bit of head cement just to secure that wing. I'm not going to, because I don't think I need to. I used a good amount of wax there. The wing's a little bit crooked. I think the backside crumpled just a little bit differently than the front side, but that's okay. This is going in a frame. That little bit of twist, it's just twisted a little bit towards the front here, would cause the fly to corkscrew badly, at least for a while, until the wing got wet or shredded while fishing. But in terms of going into a frame, it's fine. It's close enough. Now, were I tying one of my more like higher quality archive style of flies, I'd probably go back. But for kind of selling on Etsy, there is a little bit of a difference, I will admit. But that's just down to the time, because when I'm streaming, I don't want to take up more of your time. I try to keep these streams to less than an hour and a half if I can, preferably around an hour. So I don't know if you can hear it, but my upstairs neighbors, they have very, very heavy footsteps. And despite multiple efforts to make them, or to ask them to walk a little bit more quietly. It's probably not the nicest thing I've ever called people, but I do refer to them occasionally as the elephant ballet. I actually don't like this, how short these teal slips are that I have. I kind of want something a little bit longer, something to go all the way back to the butt. So I think I'm going to see if I can find some more teal. You might be a classic Atlantic salmon fly tyer when you have bags and bags of partially used barred wood duck. All right, so in the absence of quickly on hand teal, I'm just going to use Gadwall, which um, for the most part, it looks a lot like teal. Excuse me. Ugh, like I said, my voice might be gone. It looks a lot like teal. It's a little bit of a less. Sorry, it's a little bit of a less distinct barring. It's a little bit softer, but I think it'll be okay. There's no other teal in the wings, so again, this is one of those substitutions where it's like teal, Gadwall, and I forgot the other feather that is frequently substituted, but they're pretty much interchangeable. Some patterns, actually, I have noticed that there are, or I do know of patterns that call for both Gadwall and teal, which is always interesting. But in general, if it calls for one, you can usually substitute the other just fine. Nobody will notice. Unless you watch their YouTube live stream where they tell you that they're substituting it. Shh, don't tell. All right. So I have a left. Now I just need a right. I have not another. I think this pack of feathers was supposed to be hackles. That's why. All right, let me dig out some teal. Excuse me 1 second. Now, I will say, as I sort through some feathers here, I am very fortunate to know people who are waterfowl hunters. And the gentleman who provided me with these teal feathers, they are of fantastic quality. I'm very grateful. You know who you are. Now, waterfowl hunting is something that I have been interested in, but it's just very difficult to get into. Um, Dusty. Uh, and just because of, here in the United States, waterfowl hunting is not only very controlled, but access to a lot of the waterways in which waterfowl hunting occurs is often restricted, um, or you know, is oftentimes very crowded. um, but yeah, given the opportunity, I would go waterfowl hunting. So if any of you on the East Coast are into waterfowl hunting, I would go hunt some ducks and geese. Um, my favorite so far. I am a I'm what you would call an adult onset hunter. I didn't start hunting until I was in grad school. My favorite thing to go hunting for right now so far has been turkey, because I love the interactive nature of turkey hunting. The call and the response um, is just kind of a really unique experience. Uh, to me, it's a lot more interesting than deer hunting, than sitting in a deer stand for deer. Um, I know that's probably not going to make some people happy, but it's just what I prefer. Uh, but I I do like that, and I'm very curious to the extent to which um, trying to decoy in waterfowl would have the same kind of experience for me. Um, so yeah, if anybody is willing to take along a newbie, let me see what's next. Yeah, it's very strange. In my family, I'm the only person who hunts or fishes. Um, Neither of my parents do. None of my grandparents did. I just kind of picked it up on my own. I think both are a great pastime. Very important for conservation. So just marrying together the duck. I'm going to tie it in as long as I can, just down the side. And as usual, wax my thread. Just check something real quick. I am going to trim. So I've only tied in one side, but I am going to trim it right away. And the reason for that is that, as usual, I'm going to reverse my thread. So I just slide my thread between the gut of the gut eye and the front tip of the hook, and then just turn the thread around. A couple wraps just to make sure it's turned around properly. And then that is that. And if you've not seen me do that before, if you've not seen someone do that before, it is a very useful trick or tip to have, especially when tying in something like. Just trying to make sure this is the same length here. Something like duck. No, it's probably close enough. Something like duck, something soft, softer fibers, or even things like macaw horns can benefit. But by reversing your thread, essentially what you're doing is you're making it so that the forces that, because like whenever you tie something on a fly, the tendency for the material is to rotate around the hook in the direction that you're turning. So if I'm turning the thread, away from me or towards the camera like this, as I wrap the thread this way, everything's going to want to rotate around the hook this way to follow the thread, just because the friction between the material and the thread. And so with soft materials like duck or like macaw horns, well, macaw horns aren't really so susceptible to that, but I guess duck is probably the best example of a material that benefits from that kind of treatment. Because it's so soft, that rotational force can really push it away. And if you try to tie in duck sides simultaneously, both sides at the same time, that duck can, because it's so soft, it'll rotate more than other materials. And so that can really throw off your sides. One side will be unequal from the other. So by tying them in one by one side at a time, and reversing your thread in between, you're equalizing those rotational forces on the slips, and you're just increasing your ability to control where those slips end up on the wing. And it also means that the slips will end up flatter against the wing, and not kicked out to the side or something. So it's a good trick. It's a good trick to have, and it works on all manner of flies, not just salmon flies. Now, for bronze mallard roofs, I do tend to tie them in both slips at the same time, because I tend to do things. I am of the. It's been my experience that tying in bronze mallard roof, as a roof, as a shell, as in a way similar to, say, like a spayfly shell. The resulting roof is nicer, in my opinion, but it is more difficult to tie it in that way. It is definitely more difficult to tie in a bronze mallard roof, as a shell, as a single shell. But I think the results is worth the effort if you can get it. I'm not entirely certain if these slips will be okay. There's probably not quite enough gray. So if you look at slips, if you look at these slips of bronze mallard, they have the bronze tips, but then they have this gray area down here, and the gray area is really important. Sorry if you've heard me say this before. The gray area is actually really important because that's the softest part of the slip, and that's what's going to get the bronze mallard roof up and over the hump of the wing. So if you want the bronze mallard roof to follow the curvature of a wing, especially a wing like this that has a little bit more, pronounced of a hump, then you really need that gray portion of the bronze mallard to help, uh, you know, form that curvature, because the bronze part in the bronze mallard is actually fairly stiff, and even if you just run your fingers along the slips, you can feel the bronze part of the bronze mallard feels, for lack of a better word, crispier than the gray portion. So it really is the gray portion that informs how well the wing will conform, or how well the roof will conform to the wing. I think I will have just enough here, although maybe not. I think one side, one of these slips is better than the other. Um, so I'm just trying to give the roof curvature that is similar or matches. I'm slowly destroying the slip in person's hand. So just kind of give them a little equal curvature. All right. So here's actually a good illustration of the difference. So this, you can see this slip has a lot more gray than that slip, and you can tell that this slip doesn't want to take a curvature quite as radically as this slip. So this slip I can preen a little bit, and it will take that much curve. This slip, I'll just preen it just a little bit, and it's not going to take nearly as much curve. So we'll set that one aside. We'll see if we can find a better. That's not going to work. You know, God love Hairline. They have a great product, but if you can't give me an equal number of rights and an equal number of lefts. Really? The difference is that great? I have this many right hand feathers for this few left hand feathers. Hey, hey, hey. All right, let me pull out another package of bronze melon. I've actually sorted these based on whether they've been used or not. Just need one. So these are small ones. Sorry, I know this is the scintillating content that you all signed up for. Let's see if we can make this work. Oh man. I guess it's if nothing else, it's definitely time to restock on bronze mallard. All right, this should work. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a shorter roof than I generally prefer, but for now, beggars can't be choosers. All right. before we mess it up again. Wax our thread. Tighten everything down. Okay. The nice thing about tying in front of the camera is I can actually see what the other side of my fly looks like. All right. I'm not having good luck with duck today. Hopefully I can find a crest for this thing. And we'll finish out the fly. Now, I normally store crests in an Altoid tin, which is what I've done. I try to sort them by color so that they are matching as close as possible. However, I think sometimes there are some pretty subtle like color differences and variants and things that aren't quite right. So hopefully we can find a crest. Hopefully we can find a crest that's long enough. I don't think we will though. Ah, here's one. Surely this is long enough. Yep. Okay. So to prepare the crest, all I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off a little bit of extra fuzz at the bottom. Take my flat nose pliers, or flat jawed or smooth jawed pliers. Just going to mash down the rachis, the stem, right at the tine point. And we'll see if I've guessed correctly on the length. We can adjust it later, obviously, but just going to lightly tie it in just to see if I've got it right. And I'd say that actually looks pretty well. So I think we're going to make that permanent. And now if I needed to, I could just shorten it. I'd just move the tie-in point up the feather a little bit. But I'd say that looks pretty good. Everything seems to line up well. So we'll roll with that. I like that. Now I'm going to wax the heck out of my thread here because we also need a layer of wax to help the dubbing stick. So wax thread. Turns just to secure everything. Trim this here. And keep advancing the wax thread down the head. Again, just to secure everything. Okay. Wax the thread again. Let me grab the dubbing. As usual, using scarlet mohair. instead of wool. It does call for wool, I believe, but I use scarlet mohair because it's what I got. Mohair, I believe, is rabbit fur, if I'm not mistaken. But it works as a good substitute. I find and I will also note that do find in general that a lot of wool, like genuine wool, tends to be pretty coarse looking on all but like the largest flies. And I know it's probably more traditional, and it does probably depend on the variety or the breed of sheep from which you get your wool. But I do find that mohair generally looks all right on most sizes of flies, whereas at least the wool that I have seen available is generally too coarse for most flies under 5 or 6 odd. So I'm going to dub that pretty tight just so that the head is neat, tidy, and also so keep it out of the way of the head cement. Okay. Wax my thread again. Just to bind. Waxing your thread has an additional benefit that if you have any leftover fuzzy bits, it does help bind them down and just clean up the head area of your fly a little bit. And I'll take a whip finish. And we'll run a little bit of head cement in front of this, at the front of the fly, just to clean that up. Yeah, there we go. That is Price Tannet's Black Doctor. Turn it around so that you can see what I see. And yeah, thanks for hanging out. Like I said, if you enjoy my work and want to see more of it, you can check out my Instagram at justwondering.brad. If you'd like to support the stream, support the channel, you can check out my Etsy shop, Studio1213 on Etsy. Yeah, and thanks for hanging out today. If you're new to the stream, just as a reminder, I try to stream most weekends. I had some time off due to a death in the family recently, but hopefully I'll be back on a more regular schedule. Hopefully, there won't be too much life interference. I think I mentioned this last time I streamed. I am I'm being re-rolled at work. And so I think my work schedule is going to change. So some of these weekend streams might be on Saturdays. Once that happens, but other than that, hopefully, just stay on a regular schedule. Just as a reminder, I am looking for suggestions for things that you would like to see me try to turn into salmon flies. I think I've decided to go with other non-salmon patterns. So, for example, if you want to see me try to turn your favorite, wet fly into a salmon fly, comment down below, or comment on the picture of the Black Doctor that will be going up on the Instagram probably early this week. Today, probably later today, but maybe not until tomorrow. If you comment, let me know what non-salmon fly you would like to see me try to turn into a salmon fly. Once this video goes up on YouTube, if you put it in the chat now, don't think that actually translates over into the comment section on YouTube once the recorded video goes up. I'm not 100% certain on that. Or like I said, you can comment on the Instagram post. The only consideration that I would ask you guys for is something with more colors than brown. Just because brown salmon flies, which are only brown, are difficult to make interesting. So, if you have a Bergman wet or, for example, a Cahill style fly or a saltwater fly that you would like to see me try to turn into a salmon fly, please let me know. And we'll do this for a couple of rounds. We'll see what we can do. I'll probably intersperse those streams with my normal kind of classic pattern streams. But I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys can challenge me with. And if you want to participate and play along, so to speak, if you suggest a fly and you want to have your own go at it, please do. Tag me in the photo. I will think of a hashtag if we want to do a hashtag. But tag me in the photo just so we can see how it goes and have fun that way. But other than that, thanks for hanging out. Hope everybody has a great Sunday evening. I hope your week goes well, and I should stream next week. I don't, off the top of my head, there's no reason why I can't stream next week. So I will see you all next week, and take care.